everybody. Welcome to episode 6, and this is actually take 2 of our episode 6.
It is.
Sorry about that. We're a day late on uploading because our track just didn't record the way we wanted it to. I mean, it's just our luck, honestly.
You know, we just like to have a lot of technical difficulties.
I mean, yeah. So we're hopefully this works out better for your ears because it wouldn't have last time.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Kaylee.
And as always, you can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast, basically. Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube. Is that it? I think that's it.
Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher.
Stitcher, yes, I keep forgetting Stitcher. Okay, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We got a website now. That's pretty exciting stuff. That's goingmadpodcast.com. Hit us up on there. You'll find our latest episodes, all of our episodes. And what else will you find on there? Oh, where to hit us up at. And our sources.
Yeah.
And hey, if you guys have a story to tell us, I mean, it can be about anything. We want to hear it. Just email at us at goingmadpod@gmail.com. And so today's episode, Kaylee's talking about the story of Bobby Bizup and his suspicious details surrounding his death. And I will be talking about the haunted location of Ashmore Estates. But Kaylee's going to get into it first, so let's hear it, Kaylee.
Okay. So I just want to preface this by saying it's a little dark.
It's very dark.
Yeah. I just... It gets rough. And I just want to warn people.
Yeah, a good disclaimer before you start.
Yeah, agreed. So, okay. So I also want to say, you know, as I think I have said in every single episode that we've ever recorded, born and raised in Colorado, have never heard of this story, ever. And this is, like, literally happened an hour away from where I live.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so just want to say that. So anyways, let's get started. So Bobby Bizup was a little boy, and he was a almost deaf boy. So he wasn't completely deaf, but he, really couldn't hear anything. He had a hearing aid, but it just didn't do anything for him. He lived in Denver, and this was in the, 1950s. I think he was born in 1950. So anyways, he lived in Denver, and his father was a sergeant stationed at the Lowry Air Force Base. So Bobby, young Bobby, loved to go to summer camp. Don't we all? We all love summer camp.
I mean, I never went, but I've heard good stories.
Yeah, I used to go to, I wouldn't consider it summer camp. I went to, a daycare that they called a camp.
There you go. That's
I wouldn't call it a summer camp, though. Anyways.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So Bobby liked to go to summer camp, and so he would go to Camp St. Malo, which was a Catholic summer camp. So, it was in the middle of the mountains, as most kind of summer camps tend to be. It was located between Allens Park and Estes Park, Colorado, at the base of Mount Meeker in Rocky Mountain National Park. So just a little bit of history of the camp. It started in 1934, and it was, like I said, a summer camp for Catholic boys where they could, swim, shoot guns, hike, and most of all,
spit.
Camp.
Spit? I don't know why, but I just picture boys spitting all the time.
Yeah, so the camp would allow boys of all ages, up until about they were 16 years old. And they would stay at a week at a time. They would only do 1 week at a time. But from what I've researched, from what I've read, they could do multiple weeks within one summer, which is what young Bobby did. The camp would be open, once again, as most summer camps are, from June to August.
Hence the name.
Yeah, and it like I said, it was a summer camp. I think from what I read, that it was mostly like the middle of June to kind of the middle of August. So about 2 months it was open. So where the camp is currently, or previously, the camp's gone now. I mean, there were fires and floods, but the chapel still stands there. So in the 80s, the camp closed, and then in 2011, there was a fire that destroyed most of the buildings, and then a flood destroyed most of the land 2 years later. But like I said, the chapel still stands, and there's, people go to it all the time. So, as previously stated, this was a Catholic boys' camp. And we all know what that stigma is about boys and Catholicism. So,
I've heard a thing or two.
if you haven't heard it, there's a thing where, priests take advantage of boys. I hate saying this. Like, I hate talking about it. It just makes me cringe. So, in 2019, there was a group of attorneys in Colorado that were trying to kind of look into some of the cases and claims against the Catholic priests in the state, and they ended up looking at 70 years worth of information, basically, in cases, and they ended up finding that there were 43 priests. 43 priests.
That's so many.
That had molested 166 children within the 70 years. So from 1950 to 2019. So this ended up getting traced back to the camp, unfortunately. The founder of the camp was identified as a molester and had molested a teenager in 1949 and 1950. And then, people started hearing like, oh, crap, this is happening at our camp, guys, under our noses. And then there was so there were 2 priests at the camp at the same time who were basically confirmed to be child molesters. One was Father Harold Robert White, and he was called, quote, the most prolific known clergy child sex abuser in Colorado history.
What a title.
Yeah, what a title. He had about 63 victims, which is awful.
Disgusting.
Yes. And then there was another priest, like I said, that had been there at the same time. His name was Father Neil Hewitt. And he had about 8 victims. And sadly, one of his victims ended up taking his own life because of the abuse. And both of these wonderful men, wonderful in sarcastic tone, were on staff at the camp the year that Bobby was there. So in 1958, Bobby was about 8 or 9 at the time. He was like, let's do it. I want to go, man. And I believe I had read that this was his 5th time attending the camp throughout like the couple summers, I believe. So on August 15th, 1958, this was the last week that the camp was actually in service. People were, I don't know, I guess in service. This was the last week that the camp was open. So it had rained that day, so it was later in the day. Bobby decided he wanted to go fishing. So it was about 5 o'clock in the evening that he decided to go. And around 6 o'clock, a camp counselor came up to him and said, hey, it's time to come back. It's time for dinner. But if you remember, Bobby was almost deaf. I mean, he couldn't hear anything. So and like I said, he also had a hearing aid, but it really didn't help him much. So he just kind of relied on reading lips and, sign language. So anyways, the counselor stated that he had pointed to his watch and kind of like motioned, hey, it's time to go back. And that Bobby like nodded in understanding. So unfortunately, sadly, within the next hour is when Bobby would go missing, and he would never be seen alive again.
So that camp counselor was accounted for later?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yep.
Like, he just wasn't out like a couple hours and no one knew where he was at? He was at?
Yeah, he was...
Okay, just making sure.
He was on record at being around, when Bobby was missing. So it was within about an hour that it was noticed that Bobby was gone. And so basically they just decided, we're going to get this giant search group together. His parents ended up coming up to the church, and about 500 volunteers came to help search. They searched everywhere. They searched in the woods. They searched the roads, the waterways. They ended up draining a swimming hole, thinking that maybe he had drowned, but, nothing there. They ended up blowing up some beaver dams just to kind of get the rivers moving. Nothing. They searched empty cabins. They literally looked everywhere. 3 days after Bobby went missing, there was a report of a boy in Estes Park that had matched Bobby's description. And so they were like, hell yeah, this is our guy. Well, unfortunately, someone else called in later to state that that was actually his son that people had seen. And the son actually looked a lot like Bobby. Same hearing aid, same age, just very, just looked the same. So unfortunately the search ended and he just wasn't found. A few people ended up staying at the camp thinking that maybe he would come back if he was still kind of wandering around. But he never really did. They were thought maybe Bobby was avoiding coming back to the camp or avoiding being found because he thought maybe he was in trouble. But, it was later kind of determined that that really wasn't the case. So in June of 1959, Father Hewitt, which, if you remember, he's one of the men that was a bad man. He had been returning for his fourth summer. So, like I said, June 1959, just a little less than a year after Bobby went missing. Father Hewitt was leading a hike with two other counselors. And so the counselors, just as a preface, the counselors tended to be some of the older boys. So they had staff counselors, which is what Father Hewitt was, and Father White was. They were both like staff counselors, but they did end up, they had just older boy counselors that kind of helped, and which was one of the counselors. That was the counselor that notified Bobby, like, hey, it's time to come back. That was just an older boy. That wasn't like one of the staff counselors. So anywho, Father Hewitt was leading a hike with two other counselors, and they were on the eastern side of Mount Meeker. So at around 11,000 feet, which is, if you don't know what that is, 11,000 feet is usually where the tree line is, so the timber line. So they were at around at Timberline, and they ended up finding a torn piece of clothing. And upon further investigation, they actually ended up finding a bone. A doctor was called up, and it was concluded that this was a bone of Bobby. And from there, a search was formed, and they were able to find more bone, about 20 pieces of clothing, which included like shoes and pants and shirts and stuff. They found a hat, and they also found his hearing aid battery, which kind of definitely confirmed that that was him. So at the time of the discovery of his remains, the cause of death was ruled as exhaustion and exposure. But some people kind of had questions about it. Like, they were like, really though? Like, really? Yeah. Do you think that's really what happened? And so more people kind of thought that there was more of a sinister spin on it. So shoot to 2019, one of our local news organizations ended up looking into some of these cases, and they decided to kind of look further into Bobby's case. And they actually went and interviewed Father Hewitt, who, once again, was the priest that was accused of 8 molestations. And he had stated, he didn't do anything with Bobby. It wasn't him. He said that he had been running the snack bar that day that Bobby went missing. And Bobby had come up and asked him for some candy, and he had said no because he felt like Bobby had too much candy that day. And Bobby was upset and ran off. There were also reports of campers seeing Bobby leaving a hall, and he was very upset, very angry, and just kind of storming off. So like I said, in 2019, reporters were looking into some of these sexual abuse allegations. And like I said, they started looking into Bobby's case a little bit more. They spoke to a man named Larry Collins, and he had, he's really familiar with the area, so he kind of knew where the camp was, and he had spent a lot of time up in that area. And he was like, I just don't think Bobby got lost. Because that was like the main theory, was that Bobby had gotten lost and died of, exposure and exhaustion. And he goes, there's no way he got lost. If he would have gone above tree line, which is where his body was found, he would have been able to see the camp from where he was.
And there's no way he got lost because he's been there several times.
Right. This was his 5th summer there. Like, he knew the area well. He knew it enough to know, like, if you go above tree line, you can see the camp. I just don't believe he got lost. I truly don't. So yeah, the Larry Collins was just like, I just don't think he was lost. He could see the camp from where he was. So it was also stated that people didn't really go up there for fun. Like, it seemed like he was clearly getting away from something or someone. They think that he was trying to get away from the camp based off of the fact that campers had seen Bobby leaving kind of in a fury. And there were also questions about, like, the whole fishing situation. Like, okay, well, was he alone or was he with people? Because other reports say that he was with a group of people. So there's just kind of a lot of questions about this case, which I think it's just really suspicious. Like, a lot of it is super suspicious. So anyways, yeah, he had been seen, like I said, kind of storming off. And I guess there was also a delay in reporting that his body had been found. People say that it was because Bobby's, like, no one could get a hold of Bobby's family to notify them. But some people are also like, okay, but this is the Catholic Church, and they're really well known for, like, covering things up,
Yeah.
And so there's just some kind of suspicion around that. And then, like I said, there were 2 priests at the camp at the time. One admittedly, Father Hewitt admitted to sexually abusing 8 children. Whereas I couldn't find anything about Father Harold Robert White. I couldn't find anything if he had actually admitted to it or not, but Father Hewitt did. He had admitted, hey, man, I messed up. Touched some boys. Probably shouldn't have. But anyways, there was a former prosecutor that had been interviewed about this case, and he had said that if this was in his jurisdiction at that time, he would have filed it as a cold case and kept investigating it. And he also thought that Hewitt's involvement was very suspicious. And so there have been reports that have been confirmed that the National Park Service has actually opened up an investigation into this case. And unfortunately, it's going to be super challenging, only because this literally happened 70 years ago. Like, this is an old case. And so most of the witnesses are dead. And there's really no documentation that exists today that kind of details what happened. So we're hoping that, something comes from this. I mean, they've been interviewing some of the other campers that were around at the time. And it's just a super suspicious thing. Like I said, I mean, you had 2 known sex offenders, or I guess they weren't really sex offenders at the time, but they are now. But you have 2 known priests who were known to touch boys inappropriately at the camp at the time. And so here's my theory. Do you want to know my theory?
Yes, we all want to know your theory.
Thank you. I think that Bobby, and I hate to say this, I truly do, like, this hurts me to say, I think Bobby had been inappropriately touched, and he was frustrated and mad, and he stormed off. I think that he was followed to where he ended up dying, and some sort of altercation happened where Bobby ended up dying, and he was just left there. That's my opinion. I hope, I pray I am wrong. I really do. I it's unfortunate either way. I hope, though, that it truly was he had gotten lost. I hope that I hope that it's as innocent as it's supposed to be. I would hate to think that something happened.
Like, the way you said, it seemed like they started searching pretty quick after he was lost, though.
Yeah, they started searching within an hour.
That's so crazy to me.
Yeah, they started searching within an hour. So I would think, like, if it's within an hour, there's no way in hell he died of exposure within an hour of him going missing. There's just no way. So I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is, like, maybe, if someone accidentally or purposely killed him, they might have covered his body up with some twigs, some leaves, and they didn't find him the first time.
Right. And so I don't know. And the other thing that's just super suspicious to me is, like, the whole thing of, okay, if he died where his body was, he would have seen the camp. Like, he truly would have been able to see the camp because he was above tree line, and as long as you were above tree line, you could see the camp from where that spot is. So it's like, and I also read someone had said, I rarely have heard of someone getting lost by going up a mountain. So it's like, clearly he had been going up the mountain, like if that were the case, he was clearly going up the mountain. So I don't know. I think maybe he was attacked by an animal. I mean, he was deaf,
Yeah.
So maybe that is what happened. I just got chills. I just got major chills. But, there's just so many different scenarios that could have happened for him to end up how he did. But the whole kind of, like, Catholic child nonsense.
Yeah, they need to stop doing that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, knock it off.
Yeah, they've definitely been cracking down on it in the state of Colorado.
Good.
For sure.
That's good.
So, that's it. Unfortunately, it's an unsolved case, and, if I get more updates, I'll definitely share them. But, yeah, that's all I got so far.
All right. Thanks for that depressing story.
You are so welcome. I'm so good at these sad stories.
And I was going to give another sad story, guys, but I was just too sad to do all the research because my story that I'm going to be doing next time, let's just say it involves a couple murders and a hammer, and it's depressing. So, instead, I'm going to give you some haunted stuff because that is my favorite. It makes me in a good mood, actually.
Spooks.
The spooky spooks. And this is Ashmore Estates, and this is in, like, central-ish Illinois. It's actually only an hour and 45 minutes from where I live. And if you don't know where I live personally, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes from St. Louis or 2 hours and 50 minutes from Chicago. So that kind of gives you an idea where it's at. And I do plan on visiting this place, hopefully very soon in the near future.
Yeah.
They are doing, yes, they are having like bookings in 2021, like in April, I think is when it starts. And I'm going to be booking that soon. And Kaylee's going to do it. And we're going to have a good time. It'd be so cool. And guys, if I'm allowed to film this or invest a little investigation, we're going to definitely share the experience with you guys because that's going to be amazing. Even if I'm not allowed to film it, we're definitely going to talk about it on here so you can hear if we, catch any spookies ourselves. But anyways.
Yes. Oh, God, I hope not.
I'm so excited. Okay. Anyways, let's start back from the beginning. It all began in 1857. That was a long ass time ago. It started with a small 2-story building. At first, this building was just built like for the farmland around it. But then the Coles County remained to own the farmland, but sold the building to Ashmore Estates in 1959. But between those almost 100 years, it was considered an almshouse. And guys, I had no idea what this meant. When I Googled it sounded like it was like a housing for low income people.
A poor house.
A poor house, basically. And I think one source I read is like sometimes they didn't have running water or there was like trash everywhere, stuff like that. So not good, and how many died? 32 deaths were actually recorded here in that time. So, that's a lot. So when Ashmore bought this building, they actually turned it into a psych hospital. So, you know what goes on at psych hospitals, especially back in the day. Not
crazy
good stuff.
Ass shit.
Yes. And it was privately owned and actually was only open for 5 years due to being in debt. But was reopened only a year later to be a public psych hospital. So still crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Then they were actually able to build onto it once it was publicly owned. I couldn't find exactly how many deaths occurred between, all these psych hospital happenings. I did find one source that said it over 100. So
yeah, that would make sense because you got to think like in these psych hospitals. I don't know if you've ever seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If not, I highly recommend it. Although disturbing, I would think like a lot of people die.
Yeah,
whether it's from
especially back
suicide.
in the early 1959.
Yeah, so One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is, I believe, don't quote me on this because I don't know for sure. I believe it's in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be around that same time frame. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of shows how like poor mental health, how poorly they handled it back then. And so it makes sense.
Yeah. So we're going to say that it's a lot of death, a lot of bad stuff happening here. But it was actually eventually closed again due to finances in 1986. Fast forward to 2006 when it was bought to be open as just like a haunted house attraction, basically. That didn't last long because in 2014 another new owner bought the property and did some major renovations, and they currently own it today. And now it's a
renovations do.
Yes, all these like changes in the building and all this stuff happening, it's stirring up some ghosts.
Oh yeah.
So it's actually a historical building for paranormal tours today. So let's get into the spooky stuff. Ashmore Estate's own security footage actually have captured voices coming through there, which is pretty spook. And a side note, Ashmore is one of the most haunted places in Illinois.
Great.
It's actually top 3. So
perfect.
There you go. If that tells you anything.
Yeah, because you got to think like there's Chicago, which
it's old Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago's an old city. They have a lot of they have a violent past.
Yeah. So this place is
legit. Messed up.
Mhm. Full apparitions? Is that how you say it? Yeah. I'm just like losing my mind. A lot of those have been seen by many people. Some poltergeist activity has also been experienced. Lots of whispering going on. Some touches and pushes. Whisper. Actually, in the 1800s, this was actually documented. A little girl had died in a fire on the property. And they believe that they hear this little girl coming through. Actually, one investigator caught Mama like that. I hope I did that justice. It was pretty, because I listened to it, and it was so terrifying. So, yeah. So, lots of voices answering questions through a spirit box. I mean, like, they would ask a question, and like, the spirit would, like, answer, like, point on. It's crazy.
See, that freaks me out. Like,
yes.
for a ghost or a spirit or whatever you want to call it, for that to directly respond
yes.
to a question freaks me the hell out. Like that,
because that's so hard to explain.
Like, I'm cringing right now. Like
dude, they asked like 5 questions and they were like spot on, like with him and everything, and it was so scary. And guys, I was watching this.
I'm like,
I was watching this like 2 a.m, like hoping no ghost was gonna be coming down my hallway.
That's
because
the
it was
worst
freaky
part
dark.
is that you decided to do this at 2 a.m. What is wrong with you?
It was the only chance I had. Yeah. So, anyways, I even heard on one of the investigations like a woman screaming, terrifying. I hate.
It was
that.
probably me.
It was probably you. Lots of unexplained noises, of course, is happening all the time. Okay, this is really freaky too. One investigation, he felt like he got scratched on the hand. And then right after he got scratched on the hand, a very chilling, "I'll cut you," was caught on EVP. I mean, perfect timing. And it's perfect. It goes, "I'll cut you."
That seriously, once again, freaking, I'm like trying to curl up into the fetal position right now.
Yes.
Like, "I'll cut you." Like, no.
I love your
no. "I'll cut you."
He really did sound like that. What's it like, hillbilly? If that's what you're going for, I don't know. But.
"I'll cut you." No, it's just like you got to think like this was a poorhouse. So here's where this is coming. This is what's dinging in my mind. This was a poorhouse that people probably got shanked a lot, man. You got to think like these people are probably poor. They want their money, and they're like, "I'm gonna cut you. I'm gonna cut you deep."
Oh God. Okay. Anyways. Infrared pictures have been capturing shadows. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of is happening here, guys. It's some spooky stuff. If you are wanting to experience something for yourself, like I said earlier, they are booking tours daytime and nighttime. You best believe I'm doing the daytime.
Hell yeah. There's no way in hell I would be caught in that place at night. At my own will.
And guys, they even do overnight investigations that you have your own little private bunk and everything in there, and you can stay all night. It's a little bit more money, of course, but I mean, hey, if you're into that, do it.
You might get cut by a ghost.
That might happen. You gotta bring your own equipment and be prepared to be scared. And because I was terrified watching all that investigation.
I'm terrified listening to this, and I haven't seen a damn thing. So that should tell you.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, you can Google or YouTube like investigations that were done there. It's Ashmore Estates, spooky stuff, and that's my story with that. I do have a little update on my house being haunted story. Lord. If you guys want to hear it. So this actually happened to my husband, and he was in the shower, and so he heard footsteps going down our hallway. And then he sounded like my dad. He said that whatever this was, said Blue, which is our daughter's name.
Oh my God, I just got chills. I have full body chills right now.
Yes, and so
dying. I'm never coming to your house again.
he hurried up to get out of the shower so he can talk to him because he just thought he was in the house or whatever. And then he gets out of the shower. Of course, my dad's not here. He asked Blue. He's like, hey, was Grandpa here? And she's like, no, he was never here. And so, yes. And then, of course, he's like, well, I guess I can explain that somehow. I'm like, how can you explain footsteps?
Yeah, how do you
and then
explain
someone's
that?
saying Blue. You can't.
How do you explain no, you can't explain that. I mean, unless someone
No.
literally broke into your house while he was showering and said, hey, I'm going to scare this guy by calling out his daughter's name, who, guess what? I probably don't know what it is, but, I'm just going to take a guess.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Like, I'm sorry, but your daughter has a very unique name. It's not like Ashley. Jennifer,
Yeah.
It's not like some name that every girl has. It's Blue.
So, yeah, that's my little update on my spooky spook house.
Oh, you should tell the story of the Snapchat that you sent me a couple
What was
weeks
that?
ago.
Oh, I forgot about that story. Okay, so we were all in the living room, and we were just all kind of quiet. And out of nowhere, we hear this noise, and you guys, I've never heard this noise in my life. I've been around a few times. I've heard noises, but I've never heard this noise. And the only way I can describe it is like a mix between a cat and a bird, maybe making a screechy.
That's the thing I'm trying to picture in my head is like what's a mixture of a cat and a bird, like meow.
Dude, this weird ass noise. Okay, and you guys thinking, oh, it was outside. Yeah. No, guys, it was coming from in my house. We all heard it plain as day. It almost sounded like it was coming from the next room, and we all looked at each other and was like, what was that? And then our little dog starts going crazy trying to find this noise because she heard it too, obviously, and she's like, what the fuck was that? And trying to find it. And so I sent Kaylee a Snapchat of her dog running around the house trying to find this
it was like straight
creature.
up probably 2 minutes worth of her just running around the
going
house
in circles, smelling.
Trying to figure out where this sound came from.
Yeah, and she was sniffing she was trying to smell its scent.
God.
And it was messed up.
I just want to apologize for all of the crazy, weird noises I've made this episode. I've been doing that a lot this episode, and I apologize, but oh no.
Yes, so I will always keep you guys updated if I have any more spooky stuff happening in my house. And
God, no,
that's it for this week.
Ever again. I'm literally never coming over again. You've ruined it for me.
Sorry.
All right, well, that's all we got. So, as always, like Vanessa said, if you have any stories, email us at goingmadpod at gmail.com. And we're on Facebook, so you can Facebook message us, or we're on Instagram, and you can send us a DM.
Mm-hmm.
We have our website now. We've got our YouTube. Subscribe, rate, like, comment, whatever you want to do. We're here to please. And we're very accessible. So
exactly.
All right. Well, that's all we got, man. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.